Joining us today is someone with 16 years of experience who goes beyond just sales tactics. Since launching I Am Potential in 2021, he's helped clients break through their personal lives, their family, and their business. But he's been obsessed with third wave psychology, neuroscience, and consciousness. And he has a huge focus on equipping new stage entrepreneurs with an internal operating system for personal growth. I'm super excited to dive deep with you today, Theos. Welcome to the Closing Authority, man.
Same, man. Same. I'm glad that we were able to finally make this happen. I know it's been hit or miss for a little bit here as we've both been having kids. Well, our wives have been having the kids, but either way, we get the easy part. But no, I'm grateful to be here, man. I appreciate you and everything that you stand for.
Appreciate you, bro. Yeah, and it's Arrow's first appearance on the podcast too.
Heck yeah.
So there we go. We got a 2-in-1, which I figured was a perfect episode to bring him on.
Yeah, absolutely. She's absolutely welcome.
I want to start off, man. I want to jump in real quick.
Wait, bro, did I just call your child a she when it's a he?
Yeah, you did.
I just realized last second. I'm like, wait, no, Arrow's a boy because my daughter's friend was a girl. We were just talking about that. Anyway, proceed.
It's funny. You know, it's funny that you even know another Arrow because we tried our very best to choose names we've never heard as names before. And you're the first person to only ever tell me they knew someone named Arrow.
So isn't that how it happens, man? Like we named our daughter Nova. And that's kind of a crazy story in and of itself. We weren't planning on naming her that. But as soon as we named her, we started hearing of other people that had Novas as well. And they were just born like after she was. So it was really interesting.
And you're like, laws of attraction literally getting collapsed around me right now. I start to see it. It's a whole yellow car theory again.
There you go. But I cut you off.
No, you're all good, man. So I want to start kind of deep. A little bit of a hard-hitting one. Why do you think so many capable men feel like they're fighting themselves constantly?
I think capable men are fighting themselves because they are. Like they feel like that because they are. Like it's a constant war in people's minds and in their body. And I don't think people realize, or maybe they're not that aware of the fact that it's happening. I know that I wasn't for a long time. I had no idea that I was really at war with myself constantly, and my thoughts, my emotions, constantly trying to suppress different feelings that I had, avoiding different potential outcomes in thought. Everybody kind of thinks of worst case scenario, right? In the presence of uncertainty. And the nature of the future is uncertain. And so I think most people, that's just how we're hardwired to be able to survive. And the best way that our mind has learned how to do that is by taking a record of the past, all the pain we've been through, and then anything in the present that's going to trigger that pain or relate to it, then we have the ability to anticipate, that pain reoccurring in the future. And so it's really just a protective mechanism that is playing out for everybody. But most people, they're probably experiencing the effects of it, but they're just not that aware, from what I've seen, that it's actually happening.
When did you start to realize like the inner game, the inner mastery was, I guess, more important than the external, right? The environment around us. Because that was a shift I only did recently, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious for you, when did that come about and how did it come about?
The first time I remember a vivid experience of like this internal battle and like the importance of inner mastery and just the internal work and world that we all experienced was when I was 3 years old, which might seem like a really long time. Yeah. I was 3 years old. Some brief context. My dad, he taught English abroad, and we ended up going to China to live for 2 years. And I was there from 3 to 5. So we're in China. My mom, we're on a train back to our place that we were staying. And she was an amazing artist. She would sketch stuff all the time. And I had this Mickey Mouse toy that she would sketch for me. And I would just sit there in awe and watch. Well, while she's doing all her shading and everything else, I lose my attention on that. And I look over, and if you can imagine, like a typical train is going to have an aisle down the middle, right? And then you've got like usually two seats on either side of the aisle. And the
Yeah.
seats are usually set up to where they're kind of facing each other. You'll have four in a kind of cubicle and they're facing
Mhm.
each other. It was really interesting because for whatever reason, I just remember being very aware that at that age, I thought that because I was so much smaller than adults, I was able to just look wherever I wanted. And because my eyes were small and my pupils were small, they couldn't tell where I was looking. I just believed it to my core, and it gave me free permission to really just stare at people and observe people. And I remember since I can remember, I just loved watching people. It's really curious. But as I'm sitting there and I lose interest in what she's doing, I look over across the aisle. There's a gentleman who's reading a newspaper, and he's just absorbed in the newspaper, whatever he's reading. He looks up really quick and he sees me, and then he goes back down to his newspaper. And the funny thing is that all of a sudden he looks up again. And I remember thinking to myself, because he was staring right at me, and he was an adult, I could see where his pupils were. So I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that he sees me. It was the first time I remember questioning my inner beliefs and world, right? And I'm like, there's no way. It was just in disbelief, right? And then all of a sudden he did something that I didn't realize at the time, but it shifted the whole trajectory of my life. He waved at me. And when he waved at me, instantly, not only did I simultaneously know that my belief, my construct of the outer world just shattered right before my eyes, but I was snapped into a state of what I could only describe as pure awareness,
Mm.
where all of the sudden I saw reality the way that it was, and I could see behind his eyes from his perspective. And before, I don't remember being able to do that at all. So it was really, really interesting because in that moment, I experienced a connection from his perspective like I had never experienced. And that shifted my whole concept of the world. I definitely wasn't staring at people anymore. When they would look at me, I was like looking away and not wanting to be noticed. So it was really, really interesting. But to go way back, like 3 years old, that was the first time that I remember just the vivid reality that our inner world is not necessarily going to um, be as accurate as we might think.
Hmm. Which I think builds into the amount of stories we tend to tell ourselves, right? When like so for context, this podcast, the guys listening right now, Theos, are between the ages of 20 and 35. And most of them are guys that are wanting to better themselves, right? Like get themselves into a better position. Maybe they're fighting life at the moment. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to, make the online world work out, and whatever that looks like. It it tends to be a period where I've found of high levels of like doubting yourself, high levels of stories going on in your own mind that
Mm-hmm.
aren't necessarily true, like you just described happened to you at 3. I guess for those guys going through that moment, what's some words of wisdom?
Well, first of all, you're not alone. Hopefully, if you haven't realized that by now, um, the majority of people who get into doing anything new are going to experience self doubt. I think the most revealing thing that I realized for myself, because the self doubt, anytime we try to do anything outside of our own self concept or construct, you talked about stories that we tell ourselves, right? These different narratives.
Mm.
From the time that we come out of the womb and take our first breath to the time we take our last breath, our mind is trying to make sure that it can understand what's happening outside of us and what it means about us. Again, it's about survival in a lot of ways. We're hardwired that way. What ends up happening is that self doubt is a natural process of trying to do something that goes outside of the construct that you've built over the years, first from your parents and your primary caregivers on to your siblings if you have them, or early childhood relationships, so peers, social groups, all of that. It starts to really solidify how we view ourselves and how we relate to other people. And all of that, the foundation for all of it is written between 0 to 2 years old. That's when the subconscious mind is written. And you could think of it like programming.
Yeah.
That programming is foundational to how you're going to perceive yourself and others moving forward. And then from 2 until about 8 or 9, that's when we are really validating the foundational program. And we're looking at life through a certain lens or perception that then is going to try and identify the experiences and the narratives to validate that foundation. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's the exact reason why I stopped doing my last business, Theos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why I got into online, because I had this idea, and thankfully, as you see right now, it's happening. But I had this idea where I knew the minds were so malleable at those
Mm-hmm.
first 2 years, like they're soaking up everything, and I was like, I want my kids. Maybe this isn't the best logic, but this is where my brain was. It was like, I want my kids to grow up as much with the same type of methodologies and thinking as I have compared to the world of what is out there. And I was like, what's
Mm-hmm.
the best way to do that? I was like, well, if I can have my kids on me or near me as much as possible, surely they're going to soak it up. Surely they're going to soak up this kind of perception. Um, how do you feel like your childhood from that age has kind of like affected to what you do now? Because you seem like 3 years old. I definitely was not consciously aware. I don't think I had any of those moments until I was maybe like 12, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I thought back. But how do you feel like that affected yours into what you do now and like the way you carry yourself?
I mean, it obviously had an impact, right? There's other vivid memories that have really like shifted my whole path in life. But to tie that into your original question about self doubt, I think that it's natural. Like you're wearing Arrow, and he's gonna not only absorb a lot of the same experiences when you're around him all the time and he's with you, but he's gonna learn to see the world his own way, right? No
Mm.
matter how much you try to control his perception and how he sees, he's also going to interpret and evaluate that information and those experiences differently than you might have. There's going to be a lot that translates, but what ends up happening is we we develop this ideal version of ourselves in our mind. That's the acceptable version, right? And it starts with our parents. Listen to me. Don't do this. Don't do that. We learn very quickly what's important. How do I need to behave in order for me to be accepted and receive the type of love and connection that I crave so deeply as a child? Because that's survival, right? We want to survive. What ends up happening then is that the mind simultaneously will also recognize what doesn't fit that narrative. And anything that doesn't fit the narrative, it suppresses and rejects and resists being true for me personally, for my identity, right? And for my construct of the world. And so you can think of this, if anybody on here has heard of Carl Jung, he's a Swiss psychoanalyst that a lot of people would know him from like shadow work. He's the one who coined that term.
Mm.
But whenever you develop this ideal version of you, this is the mask we put on to fit in, then this alternate version exists, which is the less than version. It's the one that is not good enough, right? And anytime we manifest behaviors that align with that version, then that's when our mind starts to beat us up about, well, I'm not living up to the ideal version, so I'm not good enough. And everybody is going to fluctuate. Nobody is going to be able to withstand or uphold this ideal their whole life. We weren't meant to. But the interesting thing to me is that self-doubt is going to be a byproduct of not living up to that ideal version. I doubt myself. Maybe I'm new to sales and I'm scared. Maybe I am inconsistent and I can't figure out how to just get myself to do the thing I know I need to do. A lot of that is going to create a narrative of I'm not good enough. And it's going to create a lot of self-doubt in my ability to actually go after the things that I want to do or feel called to do in my life. So it impacts us in every way that you could imagine. because most people don't realize they're a byproduct of their environment. And that's why one of the most accurate markers of success is the zip code that you grew up in. And when I say success, I'm talking about like worldly success, right? From a
Mhm.
capitalist perspective. You can really identify who's going to be successful based on their zip code because the demographic, the psychographic, everything goes into that. And it's not until people start to wake up to who they really are and go beyond the programs that have been established where they'll be able to move beyond self-doubt. You'll have people like Alex Ramosi who will, tell people to outwork their self-doubt. And you can definitely do stuff like that to create enough evidence to show yourself like, no, I can actually do this thing. But that self-doubt is just going to manifest in different ways.
And that brings me like, where do you see, I guess, men confusing that classic dichotomy of doing more to be able to get better, right? But when you look at it from the outside perspective, you can see they're just not really addressing the actual underlying
Mm-hmm.
issues, right? And just doing
Mm-hmm.
more is, um, well, the classic example I think of is when I see a setter or closer stuck in a rut, right? And they haven't been performing. And usually, what the mindset they come into, if they're, work hard, I'm going to get it, is
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm just going to double my calls. I'm not taking any breaks. I'm going to work all the weekends. I'm just going to do more until it gets there. And at least from experience, that tends to not work very well, or it's a very brutal way to go about it.
Yeah.
What's a better approach?
I think the feeling like you have to do more is a compensation for whatever belief of inadequacy that you hold about yourself. A lot of
Mm.
people think that, I'm a workaholic, I hustle, and it's a big part of their identity because they've learned that that's what's acceptable. That's how I need to be accepted by other people and to accept myself, to feel
Mm.
like I'm good enough. A lot of workaholics, if not the majority of them, when you look at the latest research in psychology, it's just a manifestation of avoidance. And there's something that everybody is avoiding underneath the surface. Whether it is, well, just to give you the general sense, people can apply it to themselves, but maybe I work more because I avoid the discomfort of a relationship that has a lot of conflict. So I pour myself into work because it's much easier for me to just grind than it is for me to be around a spouse that is nagging me or, constantly asking questions that I don't have the answers to. um, Another example would be somebody who, like you, the example you gave, right, where they let me just pour my all of my attention and energy into closing or setting or getting better at sales. Not only are they going to burn themselves out pretty quickly, but they're going to at some point hopefully realize that it's a compensation for something they're avoiding or resisting the reality of that thing occurring. Another common one, to give you an example to drive this home, would be a lot of people think that they're attached to the sale. I'm sure you've heard that throughout
Mm-hmm.
sales, right? I'm too attached to the sale. Attachment to the outcome or the sale is just a reflection of resistance towards the negative potential. That's the inverse. So,
Mm.
why do I want to get a sale? Well, because I want to be able to provide for my family. Why do I want to provide for my family? Well, because I don't want, and there's where you see it flip, I don't want to end up on the street and homeless and dead. Typically where it'll go. It's worst case scenario. But that is, it's a natural process, but people have to realize there's things going on under the surface, and it's going to continue to drive your behavior. It's going to continue to create the results that you have. Typically, all of the pain you're going through, all the suffering that you struggle with, it's a result of you avoiding something, resisting the reality, the potential reality of something that you don't want to occur in your life.
And that builds on it, right? Because you have the other side of the guys that do grind and do see like a quite a level of success and whatever that looks like to them, right? And they compound those wins and they build their confidence on the fact that they've had those wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like I'm good enough because I've had the results
Mm-hmm.
versus I'm good enough because I'm Liam.
Hmm.
You're good enough because you're Theos. You are you. Doesn't matter
Hmm.
what you do. And then that moment the results dip, or they slow down, or life naturally has its ebbs and flows, they find themselves lost in that confidence crisis. The classic top tier closer who all of a sudden can't sell and is like, "Oh my god, am I even good at sales? Do I even know what I'm
Hmm.
doing?"
Questioning
It's like,
everything.
yeah, it's like, bro, you didn't forget how to sell. Right?
Hmm.
But I guess what's the difference there? How can someone who is more focused in tying their confidence inside of the results that they're getting rather than the identity of who they are, how can they try to swap that?
Well, this is what I love about third wave psychology and why I've obsessed over it, because at the foundation of our behaviors, somebody who is, built an identity around the results that they've created, or I mean, it's different for everyone, but let's say that person who they have to be the elite closer, they have to be the elite business owner who's constantly working, right? Identity is very wrapped up in that. And anytime they don't line up with that, they fall short of it, then that less than version of them starts to manifest and they want to resist it and deny it and reject it. And they don't hold
Mhm.
space for any of it. What third wave psychology has realized is that there were I guess what's helpful here is some context. There's three major waves of psychology. I study a lot of really boring literature that is very dry, and I'm going to do my best to condense this so that it's very palatable for people. But the first wave, if you've ever heard of Pavlov and his dogs, they were basically researching what's going to influence behavior, and they looked at the environment first. How can we change the environment to manipulate behavior? So they took
Mhm.
dogs and they would feed these dogs. The dogs would salivate because they knew, okay, I'm going to get fed. What they did is they introduced a new stimulus in the environment, which was a bell. And as they rang the bell, then they would give them the food. And eventually they were able to hardwire the dogs to realize that whenever I ring a bell, I don't even have to give them food, but their body is still going to respond and salivate because they created a link between the stimulus of a bell and receiving food. And so that was the first wave. Let's look at the environment. How can we change the environment to change behavior? Well, eventually the second wave of psychology started when they realized it's actually not our environment that dictates our behavior. It's the thoughts and emotions and sensations and urges and those things that come up within us internally.
Mhm.
That's what is triggered in our environment. And then it's those things that dictate our behavior. That's where you have the whole cognitive behavioral therapy. You've got the whole self-help community and coaching industry is founded on second wave psychology. Let me change the limiting beliefs. Let me create affirmations to fight my beliefs of inadequacy. All these things, right? They're trying to change the internal content, or in other
Yeah.
words, thoughts, emotions, all of that stuff. That's internal content. The third wave started when they realized that who we are fundamentally at our core is not the thoughts and emotions or the internal content. Who we are is the awareness or the consciousness that lies
Mhm.
beneath it all, that has the ability to observe it all and hold it within its awareness. So, for anybody listening, it would be the you behind those ears or the you behind those eyes that's seeing this, that's always been there. That is true identity. Not the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and our experiences and what they mean, but true identity. The word, if you look at the etymology of identity, where it comes from, it means sameness.
Interesting.
Very interesting, right? Because your true identity has not changed from the moment that you became aware of yourself. It hasn't changed. And I had that feeling after 3 years old. I had this resting feeling. As I was getting older, it felt so weird because I would hear adults talk about just getting older and how they didn't like it and all this other stuff. And as I got older, although I could communicate more clearly and articulate my words better, describe my experience, I still had this resting sense of who I was inside. It was the same. I haven't changed. even when I was, 5 or 6 or 8 or 12, running around playing with friends, doing stupid stuff that boys do. That I felt the same on the inside. And
Mhm.
I wondered about that for a long time until I started to research all this and realize that true identity is really what started the third wave of psychology. And so behavior change and lasting change, going beyond your own self-doubt, going beyond your own limiting beliefs, so to speak, or your self-sabotage, it third wave psychology has made some major breakthroughs with that because of the fact that at the core of who we are as intelligent, aware, conscious beings, we have the ability to choose. But if we're stuck in our minds with all of that internal content, thoughts, emotions, all the programming, right?
Mm.
We're not able to choose, but we're reactive. We're reactive to whatever stimulus is going to be triggered within us. And so, to make a long story even longer, founding your identity on behaviors is only going to take you so far. But if you can learn to tap into and connect with your true identity within you at your core, that's something that no matter what you do or anybody else does, will shift your whole reality and your confidence and your assurance and your ability to not only be grounded on calls, but to be able to see through a lot of your own BS as well as other people's. And I think what I love a quote from, I believe it was Socrates who said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And I love
Mm.
that because third wave psychology is finally helping to reveal how that actually works within us.
It's it makes me think of the concept of like you're not your thoughts, your feelings, right? You're not what's going through your brain. And I think it's interesting, right? Because that's a very scary thing for someone that's not around it. So for someone that hasn't looked in and maybe looked at some of the Dr. Hawkins books or just anything around the like psychology, um, but they'll be okay if they, normal person, not depressed, and they have a random thought of like, oh, what if I jumped off this bridge? Right? I think any person can have that thought. I've had that thought, right? I'm not going to go jump off a bridge. I don't want to. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
entertaining that thought. And it's okay to be like, that thought isn't me. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's the thoughts that we have every day that we never question who we call ourselves, which, how do you start to detach from those? How do you
Mm-hmm.
start to detach from those stories?
Yeah. So that's the first step. There's really three principles to evolution. The first is being open. So openness.
Mm.
The reason that's the first is because when you are closed off, it's because you're fused with your mind. And when I say fused, imagine welding, right? You've got two pieces of metal, heat them up, they become one when they're hot enough. They're fused together. Um, when you're fused with your mind, an easy way to tell is if you have to agree or disagree with any thought that is presented. You know that you're reactive and you're riding what I call the mind train, where you have no ability to determine where it's going to go. You're just on the train going down the tracks, no ability to control where it goes. It's just reactive. It's a very deterministic way of viewing life and experiencing life. Um, it's because what ends up happening is all the programming causes us to be closed off to anything outside of our self concept and our worldview and how we relate to other people. When when you can create openness, it's going to be the first thing that allows you to change. There's a famous quote from Viktor Frankl, which some of your audience might have heard, but it's the saying that he has where in between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space is essentially our ability to choose and live our potential. I'm paraphrasing. It's something like that. But that's the first step, is creating space between the content and you as the observer. So for anybody listening, like genuinely right now, humor me, I'll do it with you. Close your eyes for a second. Actually, before this will be a much better example. Before we do that, um, I want you to make a choice between the letter L and the letter F. Just pick one.
L.
Why'd you pick L?
My name starts with L.
Okay, typically what most people do. Notice how that's not an actual conscious choice. Even though we think it's conscious because we're like, oh, well, my name starts with L, so let me pick that one. It's just a reaction to how we relate to that letter and the symbol that it is for ourselves. And I mean, it's great. You have a great relationship with yourself, but it's reactive. And so we have to first create space. That's typically how people are living their whole life. It's just reacting to whatever comes up within them. So I'll walk everybody through this. So close your eyes. I'll close mine with you. Take a couple grounding breaths. We're going to do 90% inhale through the belly and then 10% through the chest. Then slow exhale. Let's do 2 more of those. On this third one, just allow your body to relax. Now, with your eyes closed, I want you to just bring your awareness to the sound of my voice. And then bring your awareness to the top of your head. Notice any sensations on the top of your head. And just allow yourself to breathe normal. Every exhale allows you to relax more and more. But then, as you're aware of the top of your head, I want you to go down the back of your neck, your face. On every exhale, allow those muscles to relax if you notice any tension. Now notice your shoulders, your upper back, your chest. Same thing. Don't judge the sensations. We don't have to react to them. Just observe them. And with every exhale, allow your body to relax in those areas. Notice your abdomen, your mid to lower back, your arms. Just observe, allowing them to relax. Notice if any thoughts come up about where you should be or what you should be doing. Just observe those. Bring your awareness back to your body if they arise. Notice the weight of your body, whether you're sitting or laying or standing. Please don't be driving. Notice any tension in your pelvic area, your thighs, your knees, your calves. Just allow that to relax. Now notice your feet. And while you hold your feet in your awareness, I want you to see if you can hold the top of your head in your awareness as well. See if you can notice the space between your feet and the top of your head. Now, we're just going to sit here for a second, and I want you to just observe. Just observe anything that comes up. Whether it's a thought, a sensation, just allow it to be. Just observe what comes up into your field of awareness. There's absolutely no need to judge it. Just notice it. Okay. Bring your awareness back to your body, your limbs. You can start moving. You can open your eyes whenever you're ready. Not only do you look a lot more grounded, but I can imagine you feel it. And anybody else who actually did that probably feels it as well.
Mm.
I'm curious, what was your experience? What did you notice?
I noticed the tension throughout my neck, the tension throughout the back, right along the spine, and then in my knee was the major spots that I noticed the tension. I noticed a weight pressed against my chest.
He's out.
Yeah, he's gone. He's like, I am cooked. Put him to sleep.
What else? Did you notice anything else as we were just sitting there after we scanned the body?
It was just a sense of, I don't know how else to describe it besides space. Like it
Mm.
felt like I was like, normally it feels like you're in like a tunnel where it's
Mhm.
like we got like walls, barriers of stuff
Mhm.
going on.
Mhm.
And it just felt very open.
Yeah, a lot more expansive.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there was like, yeah, there was just nothing around me.
Hmm.
Felt the opposite of claustrophobic.
I had a client one time. He had a very visual memory, and he described it as feeling like when we started the exercise that he was had his nose up against a billboard. And then as he relaxed more and more, and as he just sat there observing, that all of a sudden he there was so much space between him and the billboard, and he was observing the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, Anything else that came up for you when we were just sitting there in silence?
Nothing else came up. It was just a sense of peace. You asked me a month and a half ago before I started to do my twice a day meditations. My
Mm-hmm.
brain would have been rapidly thinking, like constantly, thoughts just like
Mm-hmm.
never stopping. Um, Now it's like beautiful. It's like, this is so peaceful, and you could almost call it bliss, just like
Yeah,
expansion of space. Like I got a desk in front of me. I felt like I was in an empty room.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way to describe it. Being in a tunnel, being claustrophobic, like locked in. That's what it feels like when you're fused with the internal content of your experiences. So the thoughts, the emotions, all of it, right?
Hmm.
Your initial question was, how do we open ourselves up? There's two disciplines that I teach my clients to create more openness, because that's the first principle for evolution. To change, you have to become open. The first one is diffusion. It's what we just did. It's the ability to look at your thoughts rather than from them. And it's all about creating more space between you as the observer, as the awareness, and the content itself. And so, whether it's sensations, thoughts, emotions, you just sit down, get comfortable. You can scan your body like I just did with you, and you can observe it, allow it to relax, and then just sit there and observe. Whatever comes up, just observe it. So many people, when they try meditating, I can't quiet my mind. I know what that's like. I had to sit there for an hour. I told myself when I first started back in the beginning of COVID, I was like, man, I got to figure something out. I'm like running my life into the ground with my relationships and everything else. And I knew that meditation was part of it. That's what I felt. I was like, there's a key here. It was so difficult when I started meditating because, like you just said, your mind is constantly racing because it's used to go, go, go. And so constant thoughts, right? Stream of consciousness. And it's called the default mode network. If you're curious about the neuroscience, but it essentially, when you relax like that and you create space, then what ends up happening is it calms down. And so the mind can relax. And you, as the observer, if you do this consistently enough, you get better at it and you end up transcending the mind itself and losing all touch with you as an individual identity or an egoic identity. You lose touch with space, with time, all of it. And you're just in pure bliss and oneness and peace and consciousness. And it's beautiful because that experience in and of itself will change anybody's life, hands down. I know it did for me, and it has for all the people that I work with. But that's the first step. That's the first discipline to creating openness, is diffusion, where you diffuse from your mind, from your internal content. The second is to be able to tap into your true self. That's the second discipline. Can you hear my son?
Yeah, he is amazing.
let me pause. Are you going to
Yeah,
edit this at all or no?
yeah. You're all
Okay,
good,
okay.
bro.
Let me pause really quick.
Go and see the little man.
He just really wants a popsicle. Look,
Oh, well, I get
this
it.
is Liam. Can you say hi to Liam?
No.
Yeah,
Well, you
fair
can
enough.
wave at him. He's just on the screen.
What's your name?
Can you tell me? Say, my name's Ever.
My name's Ever.
Oh, try and say it right here. See if you can say it right there. Say, my name's Ever.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm gonna go take him to my wife really quick.
You're all good, bro. Take your time.
Say goodbye. Say goodbye. Wave.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for waiting.
You're all good, bro.
Looks like somebody's awake now.
I know. The calming voice left.
Yeah. At what point did he start coming over my microphone?
I think if you go for number 2 and just go for number 2 onwards.
Yeah. So the first discipline being diffusion. So you can create that space so that we can be more open. The second one is what I refer to as self as context. There's a difference between self as content. That's the ego. That's the voice in your head. If you're experiencing yourself as content, there's a constant stream of thoughts and you think that you are the voice in your head. And so being able to connect with your true essence, I refer to as the self as context, because you'll notice that awareness and consciousness, it's always within relationship to the context of our experiences. So an example of that would be with you right now. If I see something, like let's say I noticed that Arrow had his face completely covered and he couldn't breathe. That's not the case. But if I noticed that and I became aware of that in the reality of my circumstances, there's no consideration or focus or recognition of me. There's only the presence of my experience outside of me, my context, right? So there's only the presence of you and your son and what I'm experiencing, but I'm not focused on me. So for instance, in sales, people have experienced this when they are truly focused on the client in front of them or the prospect in front of them. They forget about themselves completely. They forget about the sale. They forget about all of that. And they're just focused on serving the individual in front of them. And when you lose touch with that self as content or the ego or just focusing on, your own self-concept, that's when you're able to connect to the environment around you. And naturally your true essence as pure consciousness and awareness will flow through you. And it'll surprise you how you'll behave if you just get that down alone. Another good example would be the difference between, and I might have given you this example previously when we spoke, but I use this with my clients because I think it's a beautiful depiction of this. I was taking my daughter to preschool and I was running late, didn't plan very well. And I hadn't packed a lunch because we were out of the things that I needed. I run into the store, grab a Lunchable, which is something, I don't know if they have them there, but anyway, it's a little box lunch, right? I grab it from the store, I come out, and as I come out, I see this elderly lady who spills her groceries all over the parking lot. And instinctively, intuitively, I just naturally feel called to act a certain way in the presence of that context, right? I just became aware of what happened. And you could almost have everybody who's listening to this unanimously give the same response. How do you feel called to act in that situation? To go help, right? And what ends up happening is that then the self as content comes in and says, oh, but we're running late and we have this agenda and we have our own needs and our own desires and our own challenges. And as soon as that happens, what happens is we elevate our own needs, desires, and challenges above the experience of somebody else. And we lose connection with them. We lose connection with our environment and we become the self as content. And that's when the voice in our head starts trying to justify and rationalize why it was okay to not act. And so let's say I don't respond, right? That narrative starts and now all of a sudden, instead of having this straight behavior, my behavior is kind of crooked because I'm betraying my own essence, my own sense of knowing what I should do. And when I do that, that's when the self as content has to come in and it has to get to work to justify and help us think that our crooked behavior seems straight because of our own narrative. So that can get pretty complex, but that's the second discipline is self as context, learning how to really be in your most authentic essence. But
And would you say you practice the second one by acting on it, noticing it? For instance, like that supermarket moment, like to again going back to the beginning of what led us down these three-part paths, right? Is like creating that space, detaching from the thoughts and emotions that are going through our minds constantly. Would you say the way to train number two is as you notice the context, even if it goes against, say, the content, right? Is that what we?
yeah.
Um, even if it goes against the ego, the inner self of what we call ourselves,
Yeah.
doing it anyway. Is that how you kind of practice that, or is it?
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
do it?
That's a great example. There's an exercise that I give my clients that I call disobey on purpose. And essentially, when your mind and the internal content starts to surface, let's say maybe I felt like I should go up to somebody and just ask how they're doing because I become very aware that they're obviously struggling and they seem really, really down and depressed. There's a moment of awareness where I see clearly because I'm connected to that person. Just like that experience when I was 3 years old. First time I experienced that connection that I remember. And in that moment, my mind might tell me like, oh no, that's going to be uncomfortable. I don't know them. That's so weird. I don't even know what to say to them. You disobey on purpose. You notice that, oh, my mind just came in. I'm going to create space. I'm going to notice that the thinking is starting to run wild here. And I'm just going to observe it and recognize, oh, I'm noticing the thought that I shouldn't go talk to that person and that it might be uncomfortable. And I'm actually starting to notice the feeling of discomfort and my chest tightening. But you notice that you practice diffusion and then you disobey on purpose and you act anyway with however you felt called to act. You'll always know that it's your authentic self, so to speak, your authentic essence when it's connected, it's loving, it's in service of others and the collective, and it's not focused on you.
And I think that's super. I mean, we see that all the time, right? Like even in mainstream, people are like, "Fuck your feelings," for lack of other terms. Do it anyway. And even though like there's some things maybe not quite there, the level as you're raising in consciousness, as you become more aware, your feelings have less bearings on the actions that you take. At least I found that
Sure.
for me. For instance, right now recording new ads for Closing Authority, high level of resistance to do it. Right, like sit down in a front of a camera. I literally had to sit there for like 2 hours, and I talk for a living. I'm like talking to people. It's like now there's no one here. Oh my goodness. Um, the internal narrative was finding every reason I shouldn't do it, every reason that I had to go do something else. So I need to go do the laundry. Oh, I should follow up with someone. It was like finding a million reasons to not do the thing. And it was actively sit and be like, no, we're going to do this. And then it was funny because the first time, very hard, incredibly hard. Second time, still very hard. The third and fourth time was like, oh, this became easier. This became a lot easier. And almost like disassociating. You have kids, right? Your kid does something crazy and hits one
Like
of the other kids.
screaming during a podcast in the hallway.
Right? There's a part of us that are like, you little and then it's be like, well, no, that's they're just a kid. They just want dad. Cool. I'm gonna not identify with that thought of being angry because he's being a kid. It's his life. He's okay. And not acting on it. That's how I've been trying to embrace it lately. It's like those little moments where I'm like, that doesn't seem how I want it to be. That goes against, as you said, that goes against my inner self. That goes against who I actually am. And just not acting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite, C. Terry Warner, is a psychologist who wrote a book called Bonds That Make Us Free. One of my favorite books. He has a great model for this. And he refers to these two ways of being. You can either be connected or you can be disconnected. And it speaks to the same thing that we're talking about, which is being the self as content, the voice in your head, or being in your true essence as your authentic self, or the self as context. When, let's say your child is doing those things, like for instance, my son who was banging at the door, I could easily in what years past, for sure, my mind would have gotten so frustrated. I would have been texting my wife and telling her, in a frustrated way to come get him because he's getting in the way of my needs, my desires, my challenges. So that's when we disconnect. I'm not seeing him as having his own experience that is just as real and valid as mine. And as soon as I elevate, like I was saying with that grocery experience, as soon as I elevate my experience above his, then all of a sudden I'm disconnected and he becomes an object. I view him like an object. And when you're viewing people as objects, you're going to interact with them in three ways. One, you will see them as an obstacle getting in the way of whatever your own intentions are, right? Needs, desires, and challenges. The second way you'll see them and interact with them, which you can imagine as an obstacle. Somebody cuts me off in traffic and I'm on the way to work and I'm like in a hurry, right? All of a sudden I'm frustrated and this is unjust and all this other stuff, right? These emotions, anger, all this comes up because my needs are more important than theirs. And I'm fundamentally disconnected. And so I view them as an obstacle getting in my way. Then the second way that you can view them if you're disconnected is as an object that you can use to be able to get what you want. This is where you manipulate and you use and abuse people to be able to get the things that you want. The third way would be they're just completely irrelevant to help me get what I want, to meet my own needs, my own desires, and solve my challenges. And so we view them as an object, we're disconnected, we interact in those ways, and then the only way to reconnect is, again, to start to see them as an individual who has their own experience that's just as real and just as important as ours.
And it's interesting, right? Because oh, I'm getting over a cold. When I feel like I observe that in other people, you can like see it, right? When someone's acting in one of those three ways. But sometimes it's not as easy to see it when it's yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
You're like, well, no, that's me. The ego pops up. It's like, no, we just need to get it done because it's our thing. Does that come back to just creating that space that you talked about, disassociating?
Yeah, when you start to sit down and meditate, which I would recommend to anybody, I would strongly encourage you. Let this be the invitation and another opportunity if you haven't accepted that invitation or you haven't done it previously or you've tried and it hasn't worked. Just sit down. Sit down for an hour. That's what I had to do in COVID. I had to sit myself down for an hour and I was like, I'm not going to move. If my legs fall asleep, if maybe I'll die. I don't know. But I'm going to sit here for the next hour. I'll set an alarm and I'm just going to see what comes up. And that experience will change you. You do it more consistently, you'll get better at it. And to reconnect, to be able to start seeing how you are betraying your own essence, your own awareness, you have to be able to create that level of space. And that's why it's such a good practice to have in the morning, right? You can even do it in the evening, the afternoon, whenever you need to. It doesn't have to be long. 15 minutes is what the research shows is really the minimum viable dose to experience a lot of the benefits. And so sit down, meditate, just observe the inner experience that you're having. And that's when you're going to start to become more aware. Because again, we're creating openness. As soon as we create openness, that leads to the second principle of evolution, which is awareness. We become more aware. And in awareness, you have a decision. I'm either going to close off to what I just became aware of and continue to lie to myself and justify my inaction, or based on that awareness and the sense of knowing I feel, I'm going to act. And I'm going to step into courage to be able to do that, which is the third principle of evolution, which is just engaged action, engage with life fully. But to answer your question more directly, yeah, sit down, meditate. That's how you'll be able to become aware of the different ways that you're betraying your own essence and your own authentic self.
And for the guys right now that are watching this and like, man, I ain't meditating. Like, that's a waste of my time. That's unproductive. I have shit to do. Probably one of the biggest breakthroughs that have come for me and most of the successful people I know has been taking time to have space.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that time of silence. Like, it is, because bro, I had the same, like, I've known for a very long time meditation's important. I've told other people to go and meditate, but I wouldn't do it myself. Like, that kind of like hilarious. And then as soon as I did, everything started to tick in. It was actually the highest leverage thing, quote unquote, you could say, that I could be doing, because it gave me new perspective. You show up better. You're in a better place. If you know, concept, what is better? But for people watching,
Yeah.
you're showing up in a better, more useful spot for yourself along with everyone else, because it's going back to more your true identity.
Yeah.
So for anyone that's listening and they're like, I don't think this is going to be worth it, it's not worth my time, like, genuinely, I've seen crazy results after the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. What was, I think you were telling me about your Whoop, the tracking that you do, and just meditating and allowing yourself to hold space for your experience and just letting go of any judgment or resistance towards it. You saw a direct reflection on your sleep scores and everything else.
Yeah, my sleep scores went from like 60s to 80s. Like, I went from sleeping 6 hours a night to now I sleep 7 to 9 hours a night.
Yeah.
My cumulative stress, literally the graph looks like this: spike, 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 drop straight down. And it's like went from highest level possible to I'm in like low level now.
Yeah.
What else was it? My daily activity, which funny enough didn't really increase, but my scores got higher, which I don't even know how that works, but just
So
naturally.
what is it measuring for daily activity?
So it's measuring
like how much you're moving?
Yeah, how much you're moving, also your resting heart rate in between activity, to see like how much it is there. So my resting heart rate dropped drastically. Like, it went from like being high 60s to 70 during the day. So like now it's like low in the mid 50s, touches into the 60s if I get into like engaged or stressed mode during the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Which honestly speaks volumes to whether you're in sales or business, your ability to be resilient in the face of conflict or difficulty or whatever it is, right? Maybe the funnel ads stop working, or maybe you have a prospect that's pissed off at you and yelling at you on the call. Your ability to be able to just be grounded in those situations is insane. And what's cool about the resting heart rate is that recovery time, meaning let's say I engage in physical exercise and my heart rate elevates, how quickly does my baseline come back? That's huge when it comes to being able to deal with life and trials and conflict and being able to be resilient in life, whether it's sales or business. So that's amazing, man. I love that. That's just genuinely, there is so much research on the benefits of meditation. So I would agree with you wholeheartedly. That is the number one skill that I have ever developed for myself and could recommend to anybody else.
The last thing I want to touch on, Theos, before we wrap up, is you're a dad. You just had child number 3, I believe,
Yeah.
which is incredible. How do you juggle, and how is it? I'm sure it's evolved and changed over the years, but of being a present dad, someone that's there for the family, but also someone that I know has some big ambitions and goals of wanting to achieve things. How do you balance both? Because I think that's something that I know I've struggled with in the past. Um, and I know a lot of guys do, right? Of like, I got to be there for the family and help out, but also I got to strive and achieve these things.
Mm-hmm. I think that's every entrepreneur's, like when you really start to establish a business and you start to scale and everything else, that's when, okay, now I'm out of survival mode and just trying to get some consistency. And now I'm trying to optimize for harmony, a harmonious balance. I think most people think of balance like this rigid scale that doesn't move. And I used to view it that way, where I would try and, parse up my week and my time accordingly. But when you look at how life operates, there's no rigidity. There really isn't. Life is very fluid, it's very flexible. And so people are going to naturally go through seasons. So I'm saying that first and foremost. And you've got to recognize the season that you're in. But I think that, if you can clarify how you value being, achievement is one thing. That's like goals. It's a destination I can arrive. Clarifying your values is so important if you haven't, because I define values as chosen qualities of being. And so one would be present. I value being present. It's like directions. There's no destination. There's always, kind of like if I'm traveling east, there's always more east for me to go. And whenever I have to go around an obstacle or I face a challenge that causes me to start going north, and sometimes it seems like I'm going west in the total opposite direction of where I'm wanting to go, where my intention is, then values help to reorient and help us move in the direction that we want to go. And so there's always more to be done, right? And so that's why I think clarifying your values is really huge, because then you can rank them and you can say, hey, I value being consistent. I value being a provider, but I also value being present and loving and kind and patient. And those values to me rank higher, especially depending on the context you're in. I've been working all day and now it's the evening and it's something that doesn't have to be done right now. It's not that urgent. Then yeah, my values of being present and everything else are way more valuable to me. They rank way higher. And so I'm going to go spend time with my kids. But when people can't turn off their mind and they can't manage to be present or intentional, it's really a byproduct of something going on underneath that's driving their behavior. And so sit with yourself, figure out what it is, figure out what you're resisting, because that's at the core of what's driving the behavior. And if you can just do that and hold space for it without judgment, like we've done on this, over the past little bit here, that helps a ton. But I will leave with on that note, there is one thing that I will say that really solves it all. Presence, whether this is on a sales call or whether this is your family, presence happens naturally in the absence of me and the presence of you. If I'm no longer focused on myself, presence is part of my own authentic essence.
That's beautiful, man. Theos, I really appreciate you coming on today, man. It's been fun. It's been a bit of a different episode for what some of the guys experience on here. But it is, I've enjoyed the shit out of it. So I appreciate you, man.
Same. And I think what is valuable for your audience and your listeners, like all of this stuff may seem like, okay, how am I going to relate this? What I'll say just to kind of tie things in is that the more that you can work on truly knowing yourself and mastering your own self and your own potential, that's going to translate to every other area in your life. Sales will be a direct reflection of how much inner work you've done. and your ability to hold space for a prospect and go to places that are painful for them and not rescue them from their pain. Like, think about all the new people listening here. One of the biggest issues that they have is, or challenges that they're facing, that's keeping them from being better at sales, because that's their intention, is the fact that they can't hold space for themselves and their own pain. And so now, naturally, I'm not going to do it for clients. As soon as I notice he's getting uncomfortable, I'm terrified of that, because how do I relate to it? So this stuff will directly translate, I promise, especially if you just sit down and meditate and trust. It'll naturally show up on your sales calls. But it's been a pleasure, man. I really do love you, brother. I'm grateful for the opportunity to, hopefully somebody was able to get something from this. If anybody was really listening, I'm sure they did.
And Theos, if people do resonate with this and they want to find you, they want to be able to interact with you more and, maybe go deeper with you on this stuff, where can they find you?
Actually, I will. I have a program called the Inner Mastery Program. I essentially take clients through this whole process that we've been talking about. We touched on 2 of the disciplines, but there's 6 disciplines to inner mastery based on the latest research in third wave psychology, neuroscience, even contemplative traditions like different faiths and all of that. It shows up everywhere, and it's really, really cool to see the science backing it now. But either way, I'll give you links that you can add to this episode if you'd like. There's one thing that I would recommend to anybody, because I'm focused on really who I feel called to serve right now is new stage entrepreneurs. And so I'm not opposed to working with other people, but that's who I really focus on. If anybody is interested in anything we've been talking about, I have a free assessment, and I'll give you the link for that. It's called the Inner Mastery Index. And essentially what it'll do is it'll give you 24 questions. It takes like 5 to 10 minutes. You just answer honestly and openly. It's going to show you exactly how you're relating to the internal content. Am I fused with the content? Where's my opportunity for growth here, so that I can become more open, aware, and engaged with life, so I can grow beyond what I thought even possible? So think of it like the internal operating system for personal growth, something I wish I had a long time ago. And so I'll give you the link to the assessment. People can go and just take that. It's free, and it'll give them a ton of clarity on where they're at.
Beautiful. Well, guys, the links will be in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you stay tuned. Check out some of the other episodes. And again, Theos, thank you so much for coming, man. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure's been mine. Talk to you soon.